Let us pray. Almighty God, we have called us to govern this province. We ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat U gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat U ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan U op te dra. Sikelele ilesweletu nebantu bale, umusele ukulungukpi ponduletu, kosi sikelele I Afrika, Kina abantwana bayo, kokele in kokele zayo, inike ikolo I Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. You may be seated. The Secretary will read the first order.
Debate on Vote 1, Premier, Western Cape Adjustments Appropriation Bill.
I see the Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The adjustments budget represents an increase of 10.4 million rand when compared to the 2018-19 main budget. This increase will assist the department to invest in much-needed IT refresh and to communicate with citizens regarding water scarcity, especially beyond the borders of the city of Cape Town. To deal with water scarcity, a targeted water demand management communication campaign will be undertaken in the Karoo and parts of the West Coast over the summer period. These areas remain under distress, and the campaign, to the value of 4.6 million rand, aims to encourage responsible water use so that limited supply can be conserved. The campaign will also reach tourists and residents more broadly with a simple "Save Water This Summer" message. 2 million rand has been allocated towards a strategic communication campaign which aims to report back to Western Cape residents as we come to the end of this administration. This aims to inform citizens of what we have done with public funds. Honourable members, comparative experience has shown that access to broadband has paved the way for economic growth and development in many regions. The department continues to implement the broadband project, extending access to government buildings, including schools, health facilities, and libraries. Broadband is a key enabler in all spheres of our society, but specifically for the Western Cape Government's game changers, including the e-learning program. Broadband connectivity is also being provided to Cape Access Centres to boost access to economic opportunities in non-urban areas. The 100% milestone target for broadband rollout has been reached, and there are 1,875 government sites now connected to broadband. Phase 2 of the broadband project commenced on the 1st of October 2017 and will run for a 5-year period up until 30 September 2022. During this second phase of the broadband project rollout, the minimum network connectivity speeds at government sites will be upgraded to 100 megs per second, which is 10 times higher than the minimum network speeds of phase 1. To date, 643 sites have already been upgraded as part of phase 2, and the 50% milestone delivery target is expected to be reached by June 2019. And I hope that we are going to give priority to our schools, because the difference that successful e-learning makes to our education program is really substantial. And one of the biggest barriers is sufficient connectivity where we need it. The Free Public Wi-Fi Hotspot Initiative is also part of the broadband project, Deputy Speaker. A number of hotspots have been implemented by the Department of Economic Development and Tourism in recent years. The Department of the Premier's new initiative seeks to build on the existing Wi-Fi footprint and to provide access to the public at over 1,600 government sites over a 5-year period. So that's an additional service we will provide to the public from our government sites, which is free Wi-Fi. Subject to a successful procurement program, the free data being allocated to each user per month will increase from 250 megabytes to 3 gigabytes, a 12-fold increase. This new initiative will in all likelihood commence on the 1st of December 2018, which is this Saturday. Shifts totaling 47 million rand from the broadband budget were effected in the adjustments budget for a number of reasons. These mainly include, firstly, the delay in the commencement of the new free public Wi-Fi hotspot initiative due to a protracted procurement process in the interest of public value creation. Part of the funds for this initiative, which was 13 million rand, will therefore not be spent within the 2018-2019 financial year. Secondly, 32 million rand has been shifted for software licensing in order to address the currency depreciation. Honourable members, 14.4 million rand has been shifted from capital to current expenditure to provide for the migration to cloud services. The benefits of cloud services are reduced costs, optimization of technology, more predictable operational costs, and improved business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning capabilities should this be necessary. The migration of systems to the CETA Oracle Cloud service is complete. The migration of the HIS suite of applications, that's the Health Information System suite of applications, to a private cloud is complete. And we are in progress with many other migrations to the cloud. The province is in the process of implementing a transversal client relationship management system that will enable multi-channel citizen access to government information and services. Due again to a protracted procurement process, resulting from the need to comply with all the internal architectural and standards approval processes, an amount of 4 million rand needed to be rolled over into this year. A further 7.7 million rand will be shifted to the CRM, which is the Client Relationship Management Initiative, from Business Process Optimization funds. The latter focused on improving the efficiency and effectiveness of service delivery to citizens and departments within the Western Cape government. Residents across this province gain access to computer and internet facilities also not only through our free Wi-Fi, but also through our Cape Access program. Due to cost efficiencies related to the in-house provision of our contact centre services, 4.2 million rand has been shifted internally to fund operational expenditure in our Cape Access centres. And I would, Deputy Speaker, like to invite all our honourable members to visit these Cape Access centres, which are often situated in remote rural areas, to see what a transformation to the lives of people internet access brings. Excuse me, please.
Let's hope they work.
Let's hope they do, and sometimes our connectivity isn't as strong as we would like it to be, which is the reason for our phase 2 rollout. Firstly, to 100 megs, and finally to a gig. And currently there's new technology out there that will enable us to upgrade eventually to 12 gigs, which should be absolutely magnificent. And the reason that the Honourable Jantyi mentions is precisely the reason that I'm on the ground a lot of the time checking that connectivity is actually working. The funding shift also follows the consolidation of the Western Cape Government contact channels as a trial run for Western Cape Government service channel integration, resulting in the Cape Access program being expanded temporarily to include elements of the Western Cape Contact Centre in line with our efforts to better manage citizen engagement, so that we don't leave out or leave in the cold people living in rural areas. Deputy Speaker, to mitigate risks associated with end-of-life devices, this department has prioritised the refresh of its end-user equipment. An additional R2.3 million of retained revenue has been allocated for this purpose. Honourable members, through careful management of its compensation of employees budget, the department managed to surrender R11.2 million to the Provincial Revenue Fund and repurpose. Yes, I will.
Order, member. Premier, may continue.
May I continue? Deputy Speaker, in case the Honourable Jantyi doesn't get the import of this, this is a good news story, not a scandal. Sometimes the members of the Honourable Opposition don't seem to be able to tell the difference. Through careful management of its compensation of employees' budget, the department managed to surrender R11.2 million to the Provincial Revenue Fund and repurpose an additional R2.8 million to manage various in-year budget pressures, such as the licensing pressure related to the rand-dollar exchange rate fluctuations, which would not have been necessary if we'd had a stable national government, I can assure you. Cost of employees savings in the Department of the Premier resulted from a deliberate attempt to reduce the cost of employees, as our national government keeps asking every province to do, with due regard to the anticipated shortfall in the outer years of the MTEF budget. So this, I would like to remind the Honourable Jantyi, is a national government policy which, as usual, the Western Cape seems to be the only province taking seriously and implementing, without the help of the honourable members of the opposition, I may add. The Public Service Regulations of 2016 placed a renewed focus on ethics in the public sector. The department has therefore prioritised the promotion of integrity and ethical behaviour in the workplace and wants to embark on a holistic ethics campaign, which I hope will not pass over the heads of the honourable member. The allocation of R250,000 will raise awareness across all levels in the department on the behaviours that promote integrity and ethical behaviour. The envisaged impact is that all officials in the department will be exposed to acceptable principles of ethical behaviour in line with the department's ethics management strategy, which will reduce ethical breaches in daily conduct. I would like to thank the Director General, Management of Staff of the Department of the Premier for their continuing contribution towards governance for service delivery. I would also like, in anticipation, to thank the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, under the chairpersonship of the Honourable Mitchell, for doing an excellent job in oversight and in accountability, and to Mr. Drickus Basson, who is the Chief Financial Officer, who runs a very, very tight ship, and whose essays on almost every expenditure I am very, very cautious to read in full. So I would like to thank him very much for his diligent service, and to the DG for his devoted commitment to the work that this Western Cape government does and to align that expenditure ethically with our priorities. I look forward to reporting back to the House regarding government's achievements and challenges during the 2014-2019 term in my February State of the Province address, which you will be very relieved to hear is my last one. Thank you very much.
Order, Honourable Jantyi. I see the Honourable Mitchell.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, it's a privilege to rise in this House and speak on the adjustment appropriation vote of one of the finest provincial departments in the country. Under the very capable leadership of Advocate Gerber and under the sound political leadership of Premier Helen Zille, the Western Cape Department of the Premier has fast-tracked innovation, service delivery excellence, and a commitment to youth development in our province over the past 9 years. As this is my last appropriation budget vote for this term, I would like to commend Premier Helen Zille for her stellar performance as Western Cape Premier, and I thank her and her department for serving our province selflessly and with utter devotion in order to ensure we build a South Africa for all. In this appropriation budget, I'm pleased to see the prioritization of additional funds for worthy programs. I welcome an additional 322,000 Rand towards Program 2, Provincial Strategic Management, which will be used for the after-school game changer, as well as 4.6 million Rand from the Drought Relief Reserve for Water Scarcity Communications. These are critical government programs in our province, and I'm glad to see that these funds has been, these additional funds have been directed to these initiatives. Furthermore, the 4.4 million Rand, which was shifted to fund various education ICT activities, as well as the 2.2 million Rand shifted, which will fund ICT requirements for the Health Office Modernization Project. This is further evidence, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of the DA-led Western Cape Government's effective and sound financial management of additional funds to modernize and capacitate our government to best serve the people of this province. Again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to ensure we build one South Africa for all. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I welcome the provincial, the realignment of the provincial budget for, amongst others, ICT infrastructure, public Wi-Fi rollout, and expanded broadband provision in the province. The Western Cape Government has rolled out Wi-Fi hotspots across the province since its implementation and established e-centers for all. Access to internet services at the centers are vital, as this allows young people to access opportunities to education and employment. The digital online platform instantly fast-tracks these types of opportunities. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we speak about a government's commitment to create an enabling environment, the Western Cape Government demonstrates just how a South Africa can look and feel under sound political leadership. Fit-for-purpose officials and a commitment by our citizens to achieve a whole-of-society approach. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the legacy left by Premier Zille over the past 9 years is one which has advanced and better equipped our province in terms of innovation, modernization, and interconnectivity in the face of globalizing and digital world. The Western Cape, Mr. Deputy Speaker, now has broadband from Cape Town to Merweville, from Vredendal to George, from Hout Bay to Khayelitsha. Government services have been digitized and streamlined for greater accessibility through the province-wide internet rollout. And residents of the Western Cape now have ICT centers, internet access, and access to information technology in every corner of this province. This, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is a clear indication of this department's commitment to build one South Africa for all. Honourable Deputy Speaker, allow me to take this opportunity to thank the committee staff of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, and in particular the committee coordinator, Ms. Wasima Kamish-Ahmad, and Assistant Committee Coordinator, Ms. Masinkle Nontsapi, under the direction of Ms. Lizette Klute, for their never-ending support, the dedication, and commitment to the Standing Committee during this year. We are indeed better together. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm proud to say that the DA supports Vote 1, the Department of the Premier. I thank you.
Honourable Magaga.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. From the outset, I want to register my disappointment with the decrease in adjusted appropriation for Program 2 and 3. Program 2 is responsible for the implementation of youth development strategy. In the APP, the Premier told us that under the SAR program, her department will work the social development to implement the youth development strategy. The Bureau told us that over 29% of youth in the Western Cape are unemployed. For those in the 15 to 24 cohorts, the number is even more. In Khayelitsha and other African townships, the situation is worse. Unemployment goes beyond 50%. How is this then a budget for youth and jobs when there is such reduction in the budget for youth. It is an open secret that the department is failing in the broadband game changer. The AG's report showed that the department recorded a negligible underspending for the broadband rollout project due to the reduction in the number of sites targeted for the broadband connectivity from 2,000 to only 1,875. Conditional grants were not spent because the department failed to install network infrastructure as per its planned targets. This budget for program is set to continue in that trajectory. For instance, payment for capital assets are reduced by over 14 million. The adjusted appropriation for sub-program 4.4 is reduced by 47 million. Funds are shifted to other programs because the department fears to underspend. This is not about service delivery and citizen impact. Speaker, while I'm comfortable with the increase of 10 million to the department's adjustment appropriation, it is disappointing that the bulk of it comes from rollover. That is money the department failed to spend. Over 11 million in Program 4, Center for Innovation, a critical program for the department. Program 4 received an extra 16.9 million on the budget adjustment. It also received 14 million in environment and shift. This is all good and well. The only problem for me is the sources of this additional funding. On page 3, we know that 2 million is moved from Program 2 to Program 4. On page 5, we see that over 12 million is moved from Program 3 to Program 4. Part of this money is shifted to sub-program 4.5. Transversal application development, 3.9 million to be exact. On this, 1.9 million will be used to fund development of PERMS MIS. Another 1.3 million will be used for the development of the service benefit pension tracking system. A further 240 million will be utilized for the development of a poor performance and exit questionnaire. Speaker, I welcome the decision on this particular sub-program. These interventions were long overdue. Here is the reason I say that. It came to my attention that under Program 3 of the Department of the Premier in the Western Cape, there is gross corruption and maladministration that has gone unnoticed for years due to the lack of proper control system. For instance, all senior managers in the department, in fact, all thieves will say, where is the proof? Yeah, that's the language of the thieves. For instance, all senior managers in the department who are predominantly white are getting bonuses and extra notch without following necessary processes to determine whether one qualifies to get those benefits or not. Some people get these bonuses everywhere, which ranges from 2 to 12%. This kind of process is extended to other departments like Provincial Treasury and Agriculture, which has its own policies that give them authority to allocate bonuses to certain individuals, especially to those who have close allegiance to the DA governing party in the province. All this is done without following proper processes. This practice is tantamount to corruption. Legal opinion received by the department, by the same provincial government, advised against these particular payments and even recommended that those senior managers should pay back that particular money. This did not happen. Instead, the process continued unabated. Senior managers are still getting these bonuses and extra notches. I hope the extra budget move from Program 3 to Program 4.5 will assist to end this corruption. We have a serious challenge with employment equity in this department and the province at large. It is a concern for me that Program 3's adjusted appropriation decreased by over 15 million. These funds were shifted to other programs. The excuse used is that the funds become available due to slower than anticipated filling of posts as well as vacancies that arise during the year. Other funds become available due to staff exits and due to resignation. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, I have it on my good authority that this resignation and slower than anticipated filling of posts are due to corruption and deliberate manipulation of HR processes that is prevalent in the Premier's department. Through this manipulation, what happened is that long service white employees either resign or retire and receive, therefore, service benefits and pensions. After a couple of months, the same individuals are re-employed into same departments where they enjoy their new salary, pension, and bonuses. This is a blunted and unashamed maladministration, corruption, and manipulation by the DA, let alone that is breaking all over the country, that is running a clean government. There's no clean government there. This is happening in the same department that claimed to be custodian of good government in the Western Cape. What I have exposed here should not surprise you when you see that Program 5, Corporate Assurance, is the second least funded program in this department. The purpose of this program is to render enterprise risk management, internal audit, and provincial forensic, legal, and corporate communication services. It only received an extra 5.3 million in the adjusted appropriation. What is more concerning is that the budget for the internal audit is reduced by 150,000, while that of the Chief Director of Provincial Forensic Services, which aims to create a zero-tolerant environment towards fraud, theft, and corruption, is not increased. PFS program include fraud risk assessment for each provincial department, fraud and corruption training session to officials across all provincial departments. The funds of the legal service sub-program are increased by 500,000. The biggest increase goes to corporate communication sub-program. This kind of budget structure is clearly a weakening internal audit and forensic service, while it makes funds available to fund legal battles that may arise due to corruption in the department. This is a budget for corruption in actual fact. The corporate communication funding is of interest to me. The increase of 4.6 million is to protect the image of the Premier and her government at times like coronerism praising tweet and the paper video scandals. I can only hope that bulk of it will not go to Tony Leon and Nick Claren, a Resolve Communications, the company that has already received thousands from the city of Cape Town. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Order. In the absence of the order. In the absence of the ACDP and EFF, it's the Premier to respond already. Premier to reply.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to begin by thanking the Honourable Dalen Mitchell for his very heartwarming speech. And I hope that I could half have lived up to the words that he used. One of my great regrets about my term in office is that I have not nearly succeeded sufficiently, Deputy Speaker, in securing innovation in government. The compliance environment, I said it's one of my regrets. It is one of my regrets, Deputy Speaker, that we did not succeed in entrenching innovation much more in government. We had a long discussion with the Auditor General's office yesterday, as is normal in the routine engagement with the Auditor General. And what arose yet again is the incredibly restrictive regulatory and compliance environment that in the fourth industrial revolution makes it almost impossible for government to get a foot in the door. The procurement processes are premised on knowing what you need to procure and on doing a needs assessment based on what you have always done in the past. The very nature, Deputy Speaker, of the fourth industrial revolution is that there are new things out there that you don't yet even know you need and that you don't yet even know could help transform the lives of your citizens. And because of the extraordinary extent of corruption in our society, the National Treasury has had to put up fence after wall, after bulwark, after barrier to prevent this, creating such a restrictive environment that innovation becomes almost impossible. In fact, it does become impossible. And I compare that to countries that have the kind of economic growth that we need in order to deal with the dreadful levels of youth unemployment in a place, for example, like Mitchell's Plain and Khayelitsha, which we are not complacent about for a second, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In fact, every single thing we do, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in this government is to seek to ensure that we reduce youth unemployment. Deputy Speaker, when you go to places like Thailand or Vietnam or Singapore, you see the role of government where there is zero tolerance for corruption, but you see the role of governments in driving growth. Now, this morning I was thrilled to hear Minister Gwedi Mantashe, the Minister of Mineral Resources, standing up at a stakeholders' breakfast and making the following points. South Africa's absolute #1 priority has to be economic growth. And economic growth comes from investment. And unless we have investment in economic growth, we will not get jobs. Correct. And so he's absolutely correct. And we've been saying that for 20 years. And unfortunately, the corruption in which the ANC has specialized makes growth and jobs impossible. Because no one will invest in a country that is seen to be so corrupt and where the connected political few channel all resources that they can get their hands on into their own pockets. Minister Gwedi Mantashe recognizes this. And he said that the government's first responsibility is to create an environment where people wish to invest in the terrain of mineral resources, which has declined so catastrophically, destroying so many jobs over the past 15 years. And Deputy Speaker, he said that he, as the minister, would work very hard to create that environment by separating oil and gas from mining and by creating conditions conducive to prospecting for oil and gas off our coast and on our shores, and not putting all sorts of blockages, government blockages, in the way of doing so. And he said, when you are prospecting, you haven't found a resource to mine yet or to build a business on yet. And so he said that the BBBEE requirements for prospecting should not be there because they had, frankly, destroyed the capacity of prospecting companies to go out and do the job because they add such a barrier and such a cost to the process. Now, I can welcome. Let me say that good policy ideas from wherever they come have an impact on me. I don't commit the fallacy of origin. where whatever anybody in the ANC says is automatically wrong, and it is a great pity that the ANC commits the fallacy of origin whenever it comes to anything that the DA says, because what the Honourable Gwedi Mantashe said this morning is what the DA has been saying for 20 years. So we welcome the fact that he has finally come to agree with us, that he has eventually come to agree with us that economic growth is our #1 requirement. Otherwise, as he put it, we will not get investment, we will not get economic growth, we will not reduce poverty, and we will not reduce inequality. Because the best way to reduce inequality is to increase jobs. And that was said with absolute clarity by the Minister, and I said, hear, hear, and I was the first one to lead the clapping. He also said, which was fundamentally important.
Premier, just 1 second. Order. Order. Honourable Janchi. Chief Whip.
Speaker, I wonder if I could ask the Premier a question, please.
Premier, are you prepared to take a question?
I'm certainly happy to take a question, yes.
Honourable Wali, you may proceed.
Premier, could you tell me at this very important regional breakfast hosted by the Minister this morning, were any members of the ANC on the other side of the House invited or were present at that breakfast?
Order. Premier.
I didn't see any of them there, but the Honourable, the Western Cape Minister of the Environment and the Honourable, the Western Cape Minister of Economic Opportunities were there. And we had a very valuable discussion, both before and both during the sessions, and those two honourable members from this side of the House are still there because this discussion is so important to the economy of the Western Cape.
Does it mean that they're so relevant and likely?
Order.
And there's another crucial point that the Honourable, the National Minister made. And I was thrilled to hear that, because what it means for minorities in this country to hear a National Minister say this should not be underestimated. Should not be underestimated. He said, white people are not the problem in South Africa. Low economic growth is the biggest problem in South Africa. And he said, even if you took all the wealth of every white in South Africa, and many of us are not wealthy, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you took all the wealth of whites and confiscated it and distributed it amongst black people, it would not come near to solving poverty, and it would not come near to solving inequality. So the point he made was that we should not focus first on redistributing. What we should focus first on is growing. Because an economy is not a zero-sum game. It is not a fixed pie of a fixed size. We can grow the pie so that more and more people can participate in sharing the pie. And he said that quite clearly, that if there were no whites in South Africa, the problem would not get better. In fact, it would be worse. And the commitment of a national minister to the very same vision of one South Africa for all is greatly to be welcomed, especially when I have to return to a house of venom and racial insults and the other things that emanate from the Honourable Opposition. Please excuse me.
Honourable Janchi, you're on the speakers list on the 5th order, I see. So you'll get your opportunity today. Premier, may I continue?
Now, I was speaking about our barriers to innovation. Because of the extent of corruption in our country, Mr. Deputy Speaker, all of these blockages have been put in the way. And when I look at countries like Singapore, which set out with a one nation, one future approach right from the beginning and really meant it and really implemented, and did not hound minorities with skills and capacities who wanted to contribute, but included them and encouraged them. When I see that country today, in which everybody is included, irrespective of their ethnicity or language or race or background, in a thriving economy that is ahead of the game worldwide, from being in extreme poverty only 50 years ago, I can see what we can achieve in South Africa with far more resources, with far more infrastructure, with far more land, with far more capabilities than they ever had, if we would only embrace what we have and build on it, rather than try to destroy everything that was built in the past because it came from an unjust system. And that was the insight. That is the insight. That is the insight that Singapore and that Vietnam and that Thailand had. Now, I hear from the Honourable the Opposition, and it's an important point, that we must first give back the land. The DA fully supports land reform. In fact, the next insight, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that is going to arrive at the ANC's door, hopefully not another 15 years too late, is the following. That security of tenure underpins a banking system, which underpins an economy. And if you want to destroy an economy, you will introduce insecurity of tenure and expropriation without compensation. Let me first explain to the ANC that the most fertile land in South Africa, and a very large portion of it, in fact, I would say the majority of the most fertile land, is already in black hands. Along the eastern seaboard, which gets the most rain and has the most fertile soil. The big question is that land producing food and jobs? And the answer is mostly no. And the answer to the question of why is our most fertile land not producing food and jobs lies in a simple answer: insecurity of tenure. Insecurity of tenure and the power of traditional leaders over whether or not people may stay on their land. And instead of increasing insecurity of tenure across our entire productive farming sector, we should rather be increasing security of tenure where people don't have it. We have to increase security of tenure. And I know that President Ramaphosa understands that, because he said to King Zwelithini that we are also going to have transformation of land ownership in traditional areas, and King Zwelithini said, "Don't you touch me on my Ingonyama trust," and because the ANC is so terrified of traditional leaders, it backed off. The real focus on the need for land reform lies in our most productive land, where there is insecurity of tenure and where people need to have security of tenure, and that is what we promote in the Western Cape through equity share schemes.
Order, Premier. Honourable Chief Whip.
Well, Deputy Speaker, I just want to put it on the record, point of order, that you allowed the Premier for 15 minutes now to not talk to the adjustment budget. And a major precedent was created now, and I'm putting it straight on the record now.
I'm
so
hearing.
please, I want you and the Speaker to be consistent when we have a debate
I will
today
be consistent.
and
Let me say what my interpretation of that was. There was an interjection, sorry, about land, and the Premier took that opportunity to speak about land, and in my view, she's linking it to the growth of the country and the growth of the province.
That's right, and innovation, and why innovation is so difficult, which is the key point that the Honourable Mitchell made.
I will continue, Premier. Sorry,
So-
I take the member Ace's point. I did say yesterday that the debates will be linked to the topics in the blue book under the adjustments appropriation, but the Premier had the opportunity to react to an interjection which led to that point.
If they don't want me to potentially deviate from the topic, they must keep their interjections on the topic as well. Otherwise, I will answer them, Deputy Speaker. So, Deputy Speaker, the critical point about land reform, which we fully support, is that it is largely an urban challenge because people need land and land ownership and security of tenure where they live and work. And it is critical if we want to improve food production and jobs that land reform comes to traditional areas where there's insecurity of tenure. But as usual, the ANC trying to get a racial spin on it focuses on the few remaining farmers who keep food security alive in South Africa, instead of trying to increase food security through land reform. And that is why we support equity share schemes on farms and fully support land reform, including the use of the vast swaths of national government-owned land in Cape Town, which we've been trying to get for many years. So the Honourable Jantyi doesn't have to worry because we're absolutely committed to fundamental land reform that works. And one day, just like the Honourable Montashe comes to the insight that we have been saying for years and years about the priority of economic growth and removing the barriers to growth, so one day the ANC will come to the insight, hopefully before the entire economy has collapsed, that in fact the real land reform that is needed is more security of tenure, not less. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Now let me get back to the innovation I was talking about. In Singapore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and in Thailand, and in various other countries, 70% of children go to FET colleges, now known as TVET colleges. And in their last year, they have to start a business. And they come up with the most brilliant ideas, and the best of those ideas, chosen on innovation and merit, are then actually actively incorporated and tested by the Singapore government. Given our regime here, it is absolutely impossible to get that right. We have got the biggest tech innovation hub in the Western Cape of the entire African continent, more than Kenya and Nigeria, here in the Western Cape. Yet it is impossible, under the restrictions we face from the compliance regime, to enable government to use those solutions. We call government hacks as we describe them. We tell these young, brilliant techies what our problems are. They come up with truly brilliant solutions, but our procurement system doesn't allow us to utilize them. Now, unless we get real about innovation in government, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are not going to retain or grow the high-tech fourth industrial revolution economy which is currently pumping in this province. And while we are so busy on dealing with the thievery in other parts of this country that triumphed under President Zuma, while we are so busy dealing with that.
Just a point of order. The DA National Caucus in the auditorium is making a noise and is influencing what's happening here. Would you please ask them to leave the book? Did you allow them to
we will ask them to tone their voices down if that's the issue, but I will follow that up.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, is a political party allowed to use the auditorium? A national caucus.
If the reservation was done through the correct channels, then certainly there isn't an issue.
You know it's not allowed.
Order. Honourable Chief Whip. I don't want to have a big discussion on it, but you may address me. Order, order.
I want you to rule, Honourable Deputy
May I address you
Speaker.
on this matter, Deputy
It's
Speaker?
not of course I raised it.
Order. Order. Please come to order. Honourable Chief, just take your seat.
May I address you, please?
Briefly.
And then in economies that have really grown and flourished, once the government has tested it and become their first client, they ensure that they help scale the business not only domestically but internationally. And that is one of the key reasons why business and entrepreneurship and new ventures have flourished in a country like Singapore, and one of the key reasons why we can't get it to flourish here. And I do hope that my successor in this office has more success than I have had. But I've tried to push the boundaries as far as I can. Now the Honourable Magaka comes up and says we have reduced our involvement in youth development. Now that is totally bizarre, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Before I came here and I anticipated that particular red herring, I asked for the provincial spend annually from the Honourable the Minister of Finance, Minister Mayor, and calculating across government budgets, we spend 62 billion rand each year on youth development in the province. And over the MTEF, on strategies for youth and improving learner outcomes very specifically, we have budgeted 86 billion rand over the MTEF. Now, this is quite an extraordinary percentage of the budget, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because we want the youth to be prepared for a growing and inclusive economy. And I would like to challenge any other province to meet the pro rata share of our commitment to youth development anywhere in the country. We are absolutely committed to that program, and the uninformed words of the Honourable Magaka did not in any way detract from that. Youth unemployment is horrifically high, at 29%. And we have to deal with that from the bottom up by improving the retention rate, which, if you factor into school results, makes the Western Cape by far the best performing province in the country, because we try to keep kids at school for as long as possible, not push them out so that we can have an artificially high matric pass rate. And that is absolutely critical, and in fact, particularly under Minister Schaefer. The retention rate has got specific emphasis. Now, it is quite extraordinary that the Honourable Magaka makes allegations about corruption in any of our departments. Of course, he doesn't provide any specifics, just broad generalizations. Just broad generalizations. And Honourable Deputy Speaker, I'd like him to go and give evidence under oath on that particular point, because it will never stand up. Anybody who works with a chief finance officer like Mr. Basson knows how he scrutinizes the spending of every cent, and rightly so. Secondly, every bonus and notch increase is subject to a rigorous process, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and it is moderated. And if anybody feels aggrieved, they are entitled to lodge a grievance, which will be fairly and honestly dealt with. So to come here and make unfounded allegations under the protection of parliamentary privilege is nothing short of outrageous. And I would like to say to the Honourable Magaka, please come outside this chamber please accuse somebody of corruption and let us see him defend that in court under cross-examination.
Order, Premier, just 1 second, just take your seat. There's a Honourable Olivier.
Deputy Speaker, is it parliamentary to threaten a member of this House? That's a threat.
It's not parliamentary to threaten any member, but the Premier did not threaten anybody as far as I could understand. Sorry? No, it wasn't a threat, it was an invitation. Premier, you may continue.
Only the ANC would see an invitation.
I also heard that.
Order, Premier, you may continue. Premier, done? Okay.
Yes, I'm certainly checking my notes. This is called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and it is very useful to have my researchers on hand to use technology. You know, there's a German saying, let me use it in this House, and I will translate it because the translators might have some difficulty with it, but in fact, it's very well known. It's called Vorsprung durch Technik, and that means the advantage of technology. And Audi has used that for many years. It's a slogan for a car company, and it really makes sense, because that's how I won a rally, a motor rally. Vorsprung durch Technik. Now, let me please tell you a little bit about our employment equity stats, which I received the other day. Yeah. First of all, this department is in full compliance with employment equity requirements in terms of designated groups, and very specifically on appointing, training, and promoting members of designated groups. For example, 94.9% of our employees fall in the designated groups, with 83.5% from African, coloured, and Indian groups. The figures also show 94.2% of our promotions in 2017-18 have been from the designated groups. And I would like to simply say this, that transformation is a process, not an event. And if you try to manipulate outcomes rather than grow your own timber and enable people to compete on the basis of ability and performance, you are going to destroy the state. And that is exactly what has happened at the national level. The state has been used as an employment agency for cadres and politically connected individuals, and the result is there for all to see. Here we believe in equity, and we believe in ensuring the broadening of opportunities, not the manipulation of outcomes. And you will see the difference between the so-called transformation at national level and the transformation, the real transformation at provincial level. Firstly, at national level, the only thing that actually qualifies as transformed is when everybody is 100% Black African. Here we understand transformation to be inclusive and to be diverse, because we believe in one South Africa for all. And that, and the role of minorities, may well be another insight that the Honourable, the Opposition, may come to over time. Mr. Deputy Speaker, on the corporate assurance question, let me tell you that it is at least 1,000 times stronger today than it was when we inherited this department from the Honourable the Opposition, when corporate assurance had been decimated to enable the leadership to get away with actually downright theft and manipulation. And it's on that basis, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that I say that we on this side of the House obviously support the adjustment budget and the fact that we are taking South Africa forward one step at a time. The success of the Western Cape will help South Africa to achieve success. Thank you very much, Deputy.
That concludes the debate on this vote. Can I just make an announcement to say that the proceedings of the House is being live streamed on internet, and for them to switch over between the various votes, which will be recorded separately for later use. We will suspend business between the vote for about 2 or 3 minutes, just to allow the technical people to get their act together, and also to allow the galleries to be cleared for the next department. The House is suspended for 2 or 3 minutes. The bells will be rung again.